Two spirited seniors, one wedding weekend, 0 vacant rooms. By Sunday, they all either fall in love or kill each other first. Chapter 1: The Last Room at Lavender Ridge. If you asked Lillian Brooks why she agreed to attend a weekend-long wedding 2 states away, she'd offer 3 reasons. 1. Her grandson Mason only got married once, hopefully. 2. The invitation promised handwritten vows and a jazz quartet. And 3. The brochure said the resort's library held first editions of Langston Hughes. Lillian was a sucker for Hughes. At precisely 3:00 on a breezy Friday afternoon, her half-driven town car crested the final hill, and the full sweep of Lavender Ridge Resort came into view. Stone cottages dotted a rolling meadow, wisteria draped the balconies like velvet curtains. A white gazebo already half covered in pale pink roses waited by the lake, glinting in the spring sun. The driver, a patient young man named Devon, slowed to a dignified crawl. Lillian peered over her tortoise-shell glasses, heart fluttering with the same fizzy anticipation she'd felt on her own wedding day 50 years ago. Back then, she'd worn orchids in her hair and promised her late husband Thomas she'd never stop dancing. No matter how old they grew, life had kept its word on the old part. She hadn't properly danced in almost a decade. Maybe this weekend would fix that. The car stopped beneath the main portico. Bellhops in crisp lilac vests hurried forward. Devon opened Lillian's door. A gust of lavender-scented air greeted her first, followed by the distant hum of laughter and string music. She smoothed her silver bob, stepped onto the cobblestones, and straightened the lemon yellow silk scarf Mason had insisted would make Nana pop in every photograph. Inside, the lobby was a cathedral of warm wood and stained glass. A stone fireplace crackled even though Lake Capril didn't strictly require it. The mantel held framed love poems from couples who'd honeymooned here during the last century. Lillian's eyes drifted over yellowing paper, cursive, ink blots that hinted at hurried heartbeats. She was still reading when a receptionist waved her forward. "Welcome to Lavender Ridge, Mrs. Brooks. Checking in for the Bennett Limit wedding?" "That is correct, dear. Lillian Brooks. And I requested a ground-floor garden suite months ago." Her voice carried the gentle authority perfected through decades of chairing charity galas and reprimanding delinquent politicians. The receptionist named Helen clicked rapidly, smile gradually thinning. "Yes, I see your reservation. Unfortunately, we had an unexpected plumbing issue in that wing yesterday. All garden suites are temporarily closed. I am so sorry." Lillian arched one elegant brow. "So where will I be sleeping?" Helen swallowed. "We have 1 room left. It is in the main lodge. 2nd floor, south wing. Lovely view. And you'll all be sharing temporarily." "Sharing?" Lillian repeated, each syllable dipped in disbelief and a teaspoon of Texas heat. "With whom exactly?" Helen glanced over Lillian's shoulder, relief flashing in her eyes. "With Mr. Bennett. He just arrived." The name sent a shiver of recognition down Lillian's spine. Though she couldn't immediately place why, she turned. Charles Bennett, retired appellate judge, widower, rumored to have never missed a sunrise walk in 25 years, stood behind her like a granite statue shuffled onto the roan plinth. Tall, ramrod straight, snowy hair trimmed with military precision, his suit charcoal, his tie navy, his expression the southern gentleman version of thundercloud, silent, dignified but undeniably about to rain on someone's parade. The moment their eyes met, Lillian remembered, 6 years ago, they'd sat on opposite ends of a university fundraising committee. She'd argued for a new arts wing, he'd insisted the money belonged to STEM scholarships. The vote had ended in a spectacular stalemate that donors still joked about at cocktail parties. Now here he was, leather briefcase in hand, as if he'd wandered into a wedding by mistake and fully intended to overturn it with a well-reasoned dissent. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, voice as smooth and cool as a marble countertop. "Judge Bennett," she replied, crisp as apple pie left too long in the fridge. Helena's smile wobbled. "Ain't this wonderful? You two already know each other. 1 moment and I'll print the key cards." Lillian folded her arms. "There must be another option." "I am afraid not," Helen said. "The Whitlock family reunion booked the remaining rooms this morning, and our overflow cottages are undergoing fumigation." Charles set down his briefcase with deliberate calm. "I'll sleep in my car." "The Tesla?" Lillian shot back. "You defreeze when the battery powers down at midnight." "I'll manage." "You'll ruin your back." "So will a stranger snoring beside me." Lillian's nostrils flared. "I do not snore." Charles gave a subtle shrug. "There is a first time for everything." Helen inserted herself like a human peace treaty. "It is only 1 night. By tomorrow afternoon the plumbing will be fixed and we'll reassign you separate rooms." Lillian glanced at the sleek digital clock above the concierge desk. 3:17 p.m. The rehearsal dinner began at 6. She still had to check on Mason, press her dress, rehearse her reading, and phone her best friend Audrey for gossip updates. Spending the next 2 hours debating lodging with a man who measured compromise in millimeters was out of the question. She exhaled, adjusted her scarf, and put on her committee chair smile, the one that had convinced billionaires to part with millions. "Very well, 1 night. Judge Bennett and I are surely old enough to survive temporary discomfort." Charles inclined his head a fraction, agreed. Helen nearly melted in relief. Wonderful. Room 207. Elevator S to your left. Enjoy your stay. Lillian accepted her keycard. Charles, ever the gentleman even in stalemate, gestured for her to lead. She swept past him with practiced grace, heels clicking a steady verdict on polished floors. The elevator ride was so quiet the soft hum of hidden gears seemed deafening. Lillian pretended interest in the floor buttons. Charles checked his watch twice. Ding. Second floor. The door slid open to a hallway painted the color of chamomile tea. Thick carpet muffled their footsteps to near silence. Midway down, the brass number 207 gleamed. Charles inserted his card and held the door. The room was cozy, that was the polite term. Lillian's brain supplied smaller than my walk-in closet. But she bit it back. One queen bed, a modest writing desk, and a pair of matching wingback chairs angled toward a gas fireplace. A balcony overlooked the lavender field swaying under late afternoon light. On the marble bathroom counter, 2 monogrammed robes waited, entwined as if already honeymooning. Lillian's cheeks tingled. Charles cleared his throat. I'll take the chair. Don't be absurd. She surveyed the floor plan, calculating like a chess grandmaster. We'll strategize. In my experience, strategies often end with someone feeling tricked. In my experience, stubborn men sleep poorly. His lips quirked almost a smile. Touché. They set their luggage down. Lillian's vintage steamer trunk in robin seg blue. Charles's black rolling case stamped with airline tags from Zurich and Nairobi. Lillian opened the wardrobe. I propose a gentleman's truce. We divide the bed as children do on road trips. A pillow wall. Charles considered. A ceasefire line. Exactly. I get the side nearest the bathroom. At my age, proximity matters. Fine. The duvet remains neutral territory. No hogging. Agreed. They shook on it, her delicate fingers in his larger, weathered grasp. The unexpected warmth lingered an extra beat before both retreated. One more condition, Charles said, removing his jacket and folding it with judicial precision across the chair back. No discussing politics after 8 p.m. At sports and we have a deal. Done. Despite herself, Lillian laughed, a soft ribbon of sound that fluttered around the room. She hadn't realized how tense her shoulders were until that moment. Maybe this wouldn't be so dreadful. Charles handed her a bottled water from the minibar. Hydration prevents snoring. She raised an eyebrow, considerate or self-preserving. A wise man blends both. Lillian accepted with a nod. The last man who called himself wise around her ended up donating a sculpture garden just to prove it. Charles Bennett might be many things, but naive wasn't one of them. At 5:45, they emerged dressed for rehearsal dinner, Lillian in emerald silk, pearl studs, and kitten heels, Charles in a fresh navy blazer and a subtle paisley tie that matched the pocket square like a perfect alibi. They paused outside the ballroom doors, each suddenly aware of the optics arriving together, alone. Shall we enter separately? He asked. Lillian's hand hovered over the door handle. If we arrive apart, we'll answer questions all night. If we arrive together, people will assume we've taken a shine to each other. Which is the lesser torture? Together, she decided. When strangers assume, they rarely dig. He offered his arm. She slid hers through, surprised by the sturdy warmth beneath tailored wool. For one absurd heartbeat, she felt 19 again, about to sneak into a jazz club with Thomas. The ballroom buzzed like a beehive in lace. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across tables set with lilac and turquoise. Mason spotted Lillian instantly, broke from a knot of groomsmen, and pulled her into a hut that smelled of aftershave and nerves. Nana, you made it! Wouldn't he miss it for the world, baby? She kissed his cheek, then turned to introduce Charles. Judge Bennett, this is my grandson Mason, the groom. Mason's eyebrow shot up. Honor to meet you, sir. Congratulations, young man. Charles shook his hand with measured warmth. Across the room, bridesmaids whispered, and Aunt adjusted her glasses for a better look. Someone snapped a covert photo. Lillian pretended not to notice, but her pulse ticked faster. Dinner unfolded in elegant courses: lobster bisque, wild mushroom risotto, something bigly French involving pigeon peas. Conversation centered on seating charts and weather forecasts. Lillian found herself scanning the crowd for Charles whenever they drifted apart. Once she caught him doing the same. He tipped his glass in quiet acknowledgement. She felt heat bloom at her collarbone. Ridiculous. She was 68, not 16. Near dessert, the groom's mother tapped her glass for attention. Before we end the evening, I'd like to thank everyone for traveling so far. And I want to give special recognition to 2 guests without whom we'd have no comic relief: Ms. Lillian Brooks and Judge Charles Bennett, who have kindly volunteered to test our resort's claim of never a full house. Laughter erupted. Lillian's cheeks warmed. Charles managed a diplomatic smile. The mother continued, they resharing the last room tonight. If that isn't a rom-com waiting to happen, I don't know what is. Bless you both. More laughter, sprinkled with good-natured hues. Lillian raised her wine glass in a mock toast. Across the table, Charles mouthed, sorry. She barely stifled a grin. Back in 207, they stood by the balcony. Moonlight glazed the lavender field silver. A night bird called from the distant woods. While Charles said, loosening his tie, day one survived. Without a single judicial injunction, Lillian teased, unpinning pearl earrings. He chuckled. Tomorrow the real circus begins. As long as there's cake, I'll endure anything. They prepared for bed with polite choreography. She in the bathroom first to remove makeup. He adjusting pillows with the precision of a naval engineer. When she emerged in a satin robe the color of dusk, the pillow wall was already built a neat white barricade. She almost saluted it. Charles changed next. When he stepped out in navy cotton pajamas, she did a double take. She expected stripes, maybe plaid, not solid navy modern. Sleek, quietly confident. Everything about him was quietly confident. They slid beneath the covers, backs to the pillow wall, facing opposite directions like bookends. The lamp clicked off. Darkness settled, soft and fragrant with lavender. Minutes crawled. Charles cleared his throat. For the record, I am grateful it is you. She blinked at the ceiling. Sharing, you mean? Yes, could be been anyone. Someone who leaves wet towels on the bed. Someone who sleepwalks. She smiled into the dark. I suppose I am grateful too. Silence. A beat too. Mrs. Brooks? Thank you for not mentioning the committee stalemate. She rolled to face the pillow wall, imagining him on the other side doing the same. Why reopen old court cases? We have new evidence to collect. He gave a quiet, genuine laugh. It curled through the darkness, settled over her like an extra blanket, and lulled her toward sleep. Outside, the wind rustled lavender stalks. Inside, two hearts long convinced they were properly retired began, against better judgment, to stir. Neither of them knew it yet, but Lavender Ridge was about to draft them into the best mistake of their golden years. Chapter 2 Rules, Rumors, and Rose Petals. Sunlight tiptoed across room 207 just after 6, turning the lavender field outside into rolling waves of amethyst and gold. On the north side of the queen bed, Judge Charles Bennett woke the way he did every day, brain clicking on before eyes opened, mind already composing a to-do list. Today's list, however, was shorter than usual. No legal briefs, no law clerks, just a rehearsal brunch, a welcome toast, and the delicate matter of cohabiting with Lillian Brooks for another 20 hours. He rolled onto his back, bracing for the telltale creak of an unfamiliar mattress. None came. Lavender Ridge clearly invested in quality springs. He inhaled and caught the faintest scent of gardenias mingling with the lavender drifting through the balcony doors. The gardenia, he realized, was Lillian, her night cream most likely. A strangely comforting smell. The pillow wall was still intact. 3 standard pillows stacked north-south. A Swiss border of cotton, good, no international incidents overnight. Charles slipped from the duvet, feet finding the plush rug. Across the room, Lillian slept on her side facing the balcony, silver hair a soft halo against white linens. A tiny smile played on her lips, as though the night had delivered pleasant dreams. He felt an uninvited warmth in his chest and hurried to dress before sentimentality spread. By the time he de-shaved, changed into gray slacks and a ski blue polo, and completed 15 push-ups, naval habits die hard, Lillian began to stir. He heard the faint rustle of sheets, then a sleepy "Good morning, Judge." "Good morning, Mrs. Brooks." No snoring detected. He poured water from the carafe onto 2 porcelain cups, adding a slice of lemon to hers. He noticed she preferred citrus at dinner. She blinked, surprised. "You are full of secrets." "Thank you." They sipped in companionable quiet until Lillian set her cup down and clasped her hands. "Before the day's chaos begins, we should establish rules." "Rules?" He nodded, relieved. Structure soothed him. "Proceed." Rule 1, shared spaces stay tidy. I'll hang my shawls. You cap your toothpaste. Reasonable. Rule 2, if the resort moves us to separate rooms this afternoon, neither of us protests. She arched an eyebrow. Already tired of me? On the contrary, I merely value your spinal health. He stood, stretching. Rule 3, if gossip reaches either of us, we address it together. No unilateral statements. Lillian laughed. A joint press conference? Something like that. She extended her hand. They shook, sealing the pact. The contact lingered a heartbeat longer than logistical necessity, but both ignored it. The orchard dining room buzzed with brunch chatter by 8:30. Long tables groaned under towers of croissants, glazed ham, and endless carafes of hibiscus tea. Sunlight streamed through skylights, gilding every champagne flute. Lillian and Charles entered side by side, pure practicality. They told themselves, only to find immediate hush ripple through the crowd. Bridesmaids elbowed one another, groomsmen smirked, Aunt Marjorie actually clapped. Mason intercepted them near the fruit display. "Morning, you two. Sleep well?" Lillian patted her grandson's cheek. "Perfectly, thank you." "Whereas Tessa?" "Taking photos with the florist." Speaking of flowers, Mason's grin turned mischievous. "Rumor has it room 207 placed a rush order on rose petals. Care to comment?" Charles frowned. "We did no such thing." "Relax, Judge." Mason winked. "Wedding humor. Word travels faster than Wi-Fi here. I should warn you, half the guests already ship you too. He made a goofy heart with his hands. Ship, Charles echoed, lost. Lillian rescued him. It means they imagine us romantically involved. Charles cleared his throat. Nautical nonsense. A loud whistle cut through the room. The bride's cousin, Brittany, 24, influencer energy, stood on a chair waving her phone. To the cutest silver fox couple ever, she squealed. Applause erupted. Someone popped a confetti cannon left over from last night. Glitter rained onto the quiche. Lillian felt her cheeks burn. Charles straightened as though facing an unruly courtroom. Rule 3 invoked already, Lillian thought. She lifted her glass. Thank you, everyone. Judge Bennett and I are delighted to provide breakfast entertainment. Now please do enjoy the brioche before it cools. Laughter bubbled, tension diffused. Charles shot her a grateful glance. After brunch, the schedule offered multiple optional activities: golf cart tours, pottery painting, a guided herb garden walk. Lillian signed up for the garden walk. Charles opted for the library lecture on regional history. They agreed to meet outside the ballroom at 3 to check progress on new rooms. The herb walk meandered through terraced beds where mint, sage, and lemon balm perfumed the air. Lillian conversed with the resort's horticulturist, a Ghanaian woman named Amma, about sustainable irrigation. Midway, bridesmaid Dia sidled up. Mrs. Brooks, spill it. Are you and the judge like together? Lillian chuckled. Dia, I haven't been together with anyone since the Obama administration. But he looks at you like you re high-speed internet, Dia insisted. Trust me, my grandma is in a bridge club. I know the signs. Then your grandmother needs new material, Lillian said lightly, moving on to sniff thyme blossoms. Meanwhile, in the Cope-penciled library, Charles tried to concentrate on a historian's lecture about Civil War career routes. But whispers slid between stacks. Sharing a room. Pillow wall, my aunt's friend saw it. Hope they make it official, their grandchildren would be gorgeous. He resisted the urge to object on grounds of speculation. Instead, he borrowed a slender volume of used poems. He remembered Lillian mentioning them and tucked it into his briefcase. "2:45. Lillian approached the ballroom foyer carrying a small bouquet of fresh rosemary Emma had gifted her. Charles arrived seconds later, briefcase in hand. Garden stroll successful? He asked. Yes, until I learned you were apparently dazzled by my broadband capabilities. Her smile removed the sting. I was equally enlightened. Our hypothetical grandchildren will be stunning. He offered the book. Thought you might enjoy evening reading. Her smile widened, soft and genuine. You remembered. Helen, the receptionist, hurried over. Good news and bad news, folks. Plumbing repairs are delayed. Turns out tree roots invaded the pipes. But we've arranged alternative accommodations for you both. Judge Bennett. We can place you in the bridal party suite lounge, Ms. Brooks. UD keep 207. Charles's expression barely shifted, but Lillian saw the tension tighten around his eyes. Sleeping in a lounge meant no door to lock, no private bath. She imagined him in his immaculate pajamas, dignified among discarded tux jackets. She turned to Helen. Thank you, but Judge Bennett and I have developed an efficient roommate system. We'll remain in 207 until both individual rooms are ready. Charles blinked. Helen looked equally surprised but relieved to slash her logistical headaches. Very well, we'll expedite repairs. They rode the elevator in reflective silence. At their door, Charles spoke first. You didn't have to do that? I know. She unlocked the door. Consider it repayment for the use. He carried her shawl from the floor. It had slipped off a chair that morning and draped it neatly. Still, thank you. Sleeping on a sofa would be worsen my satya, and rob me of the pleasure of bossing you about pillows. She winked, then disappeared into the bathroom. At 5, rehearsal for the ceremony began in the lakeside gazebo. The sun dipped, painting water copper. Lillian, chosen to read an excerpt from Pablo Neruda, stood near the makeshift aisle, clutching her copy and trying not to tear up prematurely. Charles took a seat among rows of white chairs. From there, he appreciated how the wind teased wisps of her hair free, how she mouthed each word before speaking aloud, rehearsing her cadence. Her emerald scarf fluttered like a banner. Rehearsal concluded. Photographer Elise called. Wedding party plus special grandparents for a quick shot. Lillian stepped forward. Charles stayed seated until Mason waved him over. Simon, Judge, you basically honorary family now. At Marjorie's stage whispered, honorary for now. Cameras clicked. Lillian felt Charles's hand brush the small of her back to guide her into frame. It lingered a second longer than necessary. Under the barrage of shutters, she whispered without moving her lips. Optics, remember? He whispered back, I recall. Do you? The playful challenge fluttered her stomach more than it should have. Dinner that evening was a buffet of southern comfort food, shrimp and grits, collard greens, cornbread sweeter than honeymoon promises. Lillian filled her plate, but gossip proved more filling. Every table hummed with theories. At 8:07 p.m., the resort's event coordinator climbed the stage to explain next day logistics. Mid-speech, a server scurried to whisper in her ear. The coordinator's eyes widened. She covered the mic. "Excuse me." Lillian noticed first because room 207 came on screen. The coordinator had inadvertently switched the projector input to the building's security feed. There, in grainy black and white, housekeeping staff tossed buckets of rose petals across the bed, the same bed she and Charles had pledged to keep strictly Switzerland. The crowd gasped, then erupted in cheers. Someone shouted, "Don't forget the chocolates." Cameras flashed. Charles closed his eyes as though reciting serenity prayers. The coordinator fumbled the fee off, mortified. "Oh goodness, that was meant for the honeymoon cottage, not." She trailed off. Lillian stood, tapped her glass with a fork. The room quieted. She spoke calmly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I adore grand romantic gestures as much as anyone, but I assure you Judge Bennett and I did not order rose petals. We are merely victims of crossed wires and exuberant hospitality." Charles rose beside her. "However," he added, voice resonant, "should we decide to take advantage of the decorative landscape, we will request privacy." He arched an eyebrow just enough to spark laughter. Applause thundered. A chant of room 207 threatened to start. Lillian sank into her seat. Exhaling, she turned to Charles. "Joint press conference executed." "You were magnificent," he said quietly. "Naruto would be proud." His compliment tucked itself under her ribs and glowed. They found their door bedecked with a ribbon and a note, "Complimentary amenity, let love bloom." Inside, crimson petals blanketed the duvet, spiraling into a heart that straddled the pillow wall. 2 crystal flutes of sparkling pomegranate juice waited on the sill, fizzing like eager gossip. Lillian stared. "Do we sweep or frame this as abstract art?" Charles removed his jacket, rolled up shirt sleeves. "Allow me." He opened the wardrobe, pulled out the laundry bag and began gathering petals by the handful. The sight of the dignified judge wrist deep in roses sent Lillian into unrestrained giggles. Petals clung to his hair, his shoulders, the cuff of his watch. "Hold still," she managed, plucking a rogue petal from his temple. Their eyes met, close, unguarded. The air felt suddenly warm. Charles cleared his throat. Petals neutralized. He tied the laundry bag. "I'll deliver these to housekeeping tomorrow." Lillian recovered her breath. "You've missed your calling as a florist." He set the bag aside. "Rule revision: if resort staff sabotages our ceasefire line again, we request hazard pay." Seconded. She poured pomegranate juice, handing him a flute. They toasted wordlessly and sipped, fizzy sweetness filling the pause. At 10, Lillian donned her dusk blue robe and retired to the bathroom. When she returned, Charles had rebuilt the pillow wall taller, sturdier, impenetrable. Upon it sat the youth anthology open to April Rain song. Her heart stumbled. She turned down the lamp, slipped beneath covers. In darkness, Charles spoke softly. "I read that poem tonight. The line 'The rain plays a little sleep song on our roof' reminded me of how lavender rustles outside our window. It is a lullaby for grown-ups," she whispered. "Indeed." Pause. "May I read it aloud?" She smiled into darkness. "Please." His baritone flowed over the words, gentle, measured, enough to make her forget pillow walls and wagging tongues. When he finished, silence settled, plush as velvet. "Good night, Lillian," he said. First time he'd used her given name. She answered, "Good night, Charles." First time too. Moments later, rain began, soft spring drizzle tapping the balcony railing. Exactly as the poem predicted, she fell asleep wondering whether fate had conspired with housekeeping after all. Somewhere around 3 a.m., a thunder lap cracked overhead, the power cubed. Lights flashed, the digital clock reset. Lillian woke, disoriented as wind whipped curtains. Another rumble. Instinct moved her toward the closest source of warmth across no man's land, into Charles' side. Half asleep, he drew her closer, protective reflex years in the making. Their entwined silhouettes matched thunderous syncopation. Neither noticed the fallen pillow barrier on the floor. Morning light returned at 6, gentle after the storm's tantrum. Charles woke first, registering 2 things. 1, his arm numb was under Lillian's shoulders. 2, a petal clung to her cheek, survivor of last night's purge. He considered extracting his arm. Too late, her eyes opened. They both froze. She glanced at the pillow on the floor, then back at him. "Weather can be persuasive," she murmured. He managed a rueful smile. "Rule amendment." She brushed the petal from her cheek. "Let us review after coffee." Her tone held no embarrassment, only quiet curiosity, as though life had handed them an intriguing legal brief. Outside, the world smelled newly washed, lavender glistening under dew. Inside, two seniors contemplated a day suddenly larger than the rules they'd written. And though neither would say it aloud yet, each secretly hoped the plumbers worked very, very slowly. Chapter 3: Storm Clouds and Slow Dances. The sky over Lavender Ridge played coy that Saturday, flirting between sapphire blue and bruised gray like a grandchild toggling a dimmer switch. By 9:30, clouds massed thick and sullen above the rolling hills, echoing the uncertainty humming inside room 207. Lillian Brooks sat at the small writing desk, fountain pen hovering above a cream-colored note card. She'd promised to finalize tomorrow's reading for the ceremony, trimming Neruda to under 90 seconds attention spans, the coordinator had warned. Dipped sharply after the second champagne toast, but her pen lingered. Mind snagged on the new question occupying most of her cerebral bandwidth: what happens when a pillow wall topples and nobody rushes to rebuild it? Across the room, Charles Bennett adjusted the knot of a silver-patterned tie. He'd already changed shirts twice in admission. Perhaps that stormy weather predicted stormy moods. He caught Lillian's reflection in the mirror, pensive, graceful, a slight furrow between those intelligent brows. He wanted to smooth the crease with a thumb but settled for clearing his throat. "Still raining in your poem?" he asked. She turned, soft smile towing the cloud from her forehead. "Only a drizzle now. The forecast is uncertain." He stepped nearer, slipping both hands into his pockets so they wouldn't do anything bold. "There's a planned ballroom walkthrough in 10 minutes. Coordinator asked me to attend in case they move the entire ceremony indoors." "Oh dear," Tessa dreamed of vows by the water, "but we can negotiate with thunder. Not even judges can subpoena the sky," he agreed. Lightning flickered through the balcony doors, a rehearsed flashbulb reflex made them glance at the queen bed sheets still rumbled together. Single island rather than two territories. Last night a storm might have been act of God, but the intimacy felt decidedly human. Lillian straightened, businesslike. "We should present a unified front. Let us go." She rose, smoothing the navy tea dress she'd chosen, modest, yes, but the cinched waistline still earned her a wisp of mischief for wearing it around Charles. They walked the corridor in step, hush of carpet beneath sensible shoes. Somewhere behind them, a gaggle of bridesmaids giggled and dispersed a daisy chain of whispers. "There go the newlyweds in waiting." Lillian pretended not to hear. Charles heard every syllable, filing the evidence under motive unknown. The backup ballroom sat on the resort's east wing, a vaulted space with miracled cherubs and an actual baby grand piano polished enough to see one's worries. Coordinator Denise Clipboard Queen stood near the dais, walkie-squawking at her hip. "Weather apps say 80.0% chance of storms till evening," she barked. "If we flip to indoor, I need 2 reading podiums, extra uplighting, and the jazz quartet to reposition near the French doors." Lillian assessed acoustics. "Projecting poetry here requires softer reverb. We'll need lavalier mix." Denise scribbled, noted, "Judge anything?" Charles inspected floor plan. "Aisle width stays the same but chair spacing differs. Elderly guests with walkers require front row corners. Also emergency exit signage can be blocked by floral arches." Denise blinked, odd. "Who needs a planning team when I have you two?" She wandered off to wrestle another crisis, leaving them alone amid rows of unoccupied chivalry chairs. Rain tapped stained glass windows and encouraged applause. "Thank you," Lillian said. "Your eye for detail rivals a military drill." "Old habits," he replied. "I once moved an entire appellate hearing inside a courthouse cafeteria when the courtroom ceiling collapsed." "Chairs matter." A hush swelled, broken only by the gentle whir of weather on glass. Lillian's pulse drummed. She glanced left, right. No audience, no rumors. "May I ask something candid?" "Anything." "Does our arrangement make you uneasy? Sharing a bed, I mean." He looked genuinely thoughtful, not merely diplomatic. "Uneasy isn't the word. Unexpected, yes. Illuminating, certainly. I haven't held anyone through a thunderstorm in 20 years. Color fluttered at her cheeks like debutante fans. She answered truth for truth. "I felt safe, and silly for feeling safe when I've preached self-reliance for decades." He stepped closer, voice lowered. "Self-reliance is admirable. Mutual reliance is brave." An inner door opened, a florist marched in with buckets of roses, and the bubble burst. They retreated to polite distance, but the invisible magnet between them stayed humming. By noon, the rain had downgraded to a stubborn mist. Guests scattered into spa appointments or board game corners, leaving hallways oddly quiet. Charles suggested lunch in the resort bistro. They claimed a two-top by the window where ivy crawled up stone-like gossip climbing family trees. A waitress with dimples asked, "Together like always?" A claim only half exaggeration. Charles ordered tomato bisque, Lillian chose spinach quiche, and they shared the breadbasket unspoken. Conversation started. Practical library hours, shuttle schedule, then swerved gentle. "Tell me about Thomas," he said, sincere. She inhaled. Thomas Brooks. We met at a protest in '72. He held the banner. I wrote the press release. He could slow dance for hours, but he never learned to boil an egg. A soft laugh. He passed 11 years ago. Cancer. Sometimes, I still wake thinking I need to refill his pillbox. I am sorry. She nodded gratitude. And you're Margaret? The name passed his lips like a prayer. Best debate partner I ever had. She decritiqued my closing arguments, then beat me at Scrabble. Heart failure. 2014. She died mid-sentence, scolding a corrupt mayor on TV. I like to think she went out winning. They shared quiet spoonfuls, letting memory season the soup. Outside, raindrops turned to jewel drips sliding down vine leaves. At 2:15, Denise delivered updated intel. Ceremony officially indoors tomorrow, but tonight as welcome cocktail hour remained on the terrace weather willing. Lillian volunteered to help shift decorations. Charles ended up moving crates with the groomsmen, proving ex-novel captains still rival forklifts. During a break, bridesmaid Gia pranced over holding a basket of colorful wristbands. Icebreaker game. Everyone wears a band with their relationship status. She tied a green ribbon on Lillian's wrist, open to unexpected connections, and tried to loop one on Charles. He held up palm. No label needed. Gia winked. That is practically red. She twirled away. Lillian turned the ribbon thoughtfully. Perhaps green is accurate. Gardens grow in unexpected weather. Before he could agree, thunder boomed far away. Everyone glanced skyward. Denise barked. Tables under the marquee. People. They hustled linens and lanterns beneath the high-peaked tent. Rain arrived again. Sheets this time. Not drizzle. Guests squealed, sprinting for cover like mismatched geese. In the frenzy, Lillian's kitten heel skidded on slick plank flooring. Charles caught her arm, a steel cable around her waist. Her breath lodged. Thank you. Think nothing. But his hold lingered while rain hammered drums on canvas overhead, trapping them inside an echo chamber of heartbeats. Cocktail hour turned into cocktail 2.5 hours under the tent, Storm insisting on an encore. The jazz quartet relocated to a corner, saxophone melting worries into velvet. String lights flickered like constellations, unsure whether to shine. Charles nursed a ginger ale beside a barrel-turned-bar table, eyes following Lillian as she chatted with college friends of the bride. She laughed often, gesture bright, every time her eyes found him across the tent. Something unspoken traveled the distance faster than lightning. At 7:30, the quartet slid into an old blue Mitchell's Standard slow, sultry. Couples drifted to the impromptu dance area. Mason twirled Tessa. Grandparents swayed. Two flower girls tried imitating, giggling. Aunt Marjorie prodded Charles with her feathered clutch. Judge, go rescue that lovely lady from small talk before some retired dentist claims her. He coughed. I haven't danced in ages. You pilot a Tesla through Atlanta traffic yet fear a two-step? She nudged harder. Across the tent, Lillian disengaged from conversation and took a tentative sip of water, eyes longing toward the music. Charles's decision clicked like a gavel. He crossed the distance. Mrs. Brooks, he began, formal to high trepidation, would you honor me with a dance? Her face lit as though someone opened shutters inside her chest. I thought you'd never ask. They stepped onto the wooden floor. He placed one hand at her waist, the other cradle for her right. She rested her free hand on his shoulder, familiar territory since last night, but with the spotlight of intention now. The sax ruined, brushes whispered against cymbals, and they moved slow, steady, weightless, finding rhythm neither had studied but seemed born knowing. Rain thudded on the marquee, a percussion line nobody rehearsed. Her pulse tapped against his palm. You remember your steps, she murmured. You led, he answered. I just trust. She laughed quietly. Charleston? His eyes sparked. He deepened their sway one measure, then surprised her and himself by spinning her gently under his arm. Applause erupted from tables. Lillian emerged laughing, cheeks rosy. For a minute, 2, maybe 10, the world compressed to saxophone riffs, lavender-scented air, and the miracle that bodies over 60 could still ignite electrons in the spine. He pulled her closer. During a sustained note, she let her forehead graze his collarbone. When the song exhaled its last chord, neither moved away. Applause scattered like confetti. Mason passed, giving a thumbs up. Gia fanned her face theatrically. Aunt Marjorie dabbed tears. Lillian lifted her head. We'll never live this down. Charles's responding smile felt younger than his birth certificate. Then let us give them more to talk about. He guided her off the floor, but still hand in hand, claiming a small table near the edge. The storm finally relented around 9. Moist air slipped inside the tent, smelling of wet earth and surrendered petitions. Guests dispersed toward fire pits or late-night card games. Charles walked Lillian back through curling garden paths lit by lanterns, gravel crunching underfoot. Halfway, a voice called, "Judge Bennett." An athletic man in a tailored suit jogged up, umbrella tucked under arm. "Dwight Selby, Atlanta Journal-Constitution." Charles stiffened. "Mr. Selby covers political scandals," he whispered. Dwight smiled shark-like. "Relax, Judge. I am here for the wedding. Tessa is my cousin." "But I couldn't ignore the headline strolling by. You and Mrs. Brooks' romantic getaway?" Lillian interjected, pleasant but steel-threaded. "A family celebration, nothing more." That slow dance looked more from my vantage. Dwight clicked his pen. Charles's jaw set. "Off record, Dwight." "Everything is off record till it is on," Dwight quipped. "At your age. Great-grand romance sells papers." Lillian stepped closer to Charles intentionally. "Then you will need a different scoop." "Good evening," she guided Charles away, spine tall. When they reached the lodge foyer, Charles blew out breath. "I despise paparazzi mindsets." She squeezed his arm. "He is just chasing drama. We all provide none." She paused. "Unless we want to." His heartbeat leapt. Moonlight from stained glass painted her in blues and golds. For a vertiginous second, he nearly kissed her there among potted palms and portraits of forgotten founders. But footsteps echoed, an elderly couple passed. Opportunity fluttered off like a startled bird. Room 207 greeted them with quiet lamplight, housekeeping having refreshed towels and mercifully omitted petals. Only 2 almond cookies on a plate labeled "Sweet Dreams" waited, innocent. Lillian set her clutch down. "Tea?" He nodded, removed his blazer. They worked and practiced, seeing she boiled water in the electric kettle. He laid 2 chamomile sachets, steady as courtroom exhibits, steam lifted, scented peace. They settled in wingback chairs, legs angled toward each other. Rain resumed. "Now playful." Lillian sipped. "You were remarkable tonight. Proof my knees still function." She tilted her head. "Not the dance. The way you handled Dwight, the restraint." He chuckled low. "Margaret used to say I have 3 gears: silence, lecture, or lethal rebuttal. I chose silence. Wise, and tomorrow I'll choose what you need." The admission sat between them like a lit candle, flickering, fragile. She reached and laid her hand over his where it rested on the armrest. "Warm, solid. What if I need honesty?" He turned palm upward, enfolding her fingers. "Then I'll confess I haven't felt this alive in years, Lillian." Her eyes glistened, reflections of lamplight. "Me neither." She rose first, gently tugging him. "Walk me to bed, counselor." He followed, heartbeat unraveling his usual caution. At the mattress edge they paused, as if at a country border with new passport stamps waiting. Pillow wall pieces sat stacked on the chair, unassembled. Lillian traced the duvet seam. "Do we rebuild?" He answered with a whisper. "Only if you want distance." Thunder rolled far away, distant drums saluting decision. She lifted the extra pillows, placed them at the headboard instead. Distance feels overrated. They changed separately, she in lavender cotton nightgown, he in those navy pajamas, but when she emerged, he was waiting by her side of the bed, holding her blanket portion open. She slid in, he followed. Facing each other, inches apart, they spoke softly. "Still feeling alive?" "More by the minute." She ran fingertips along the faint scar on his temple, a childhood fall. He'd once mentioned, "Storm seems to have passed." "Outside, perhaps." She smiled. "Inside too for now." They didn't rush a kiss, instead they shared the luxury of proximity, exploring lines on faces, mapping freckles like secret archipelagos. Eventually her eyelids grew heavy. His breathing slowed in response. He wrapped an arm around her waist. She pillowed her head against his shoulder. The last thing she heard was his murmured promise: "Sunrise. We'll dance again, even if it is just in the hallway." She dreamt of morning light blazing through lavender, and of a jazz saxophone sighing them forward step by step. Outside, clouds shredded under late-night gusts, stars blinking through like shy children peeking after mischief. The resort slept, unaware that room 207 had quietly rewritten its ceasefire into something resembling surrender, sweet, deliberate, inevitable. Tomorrow would unveil new challenges, ex-students bearing grudges, plumbing still annoyingly clogged. Headlines perhaps, but for the span of one stormy day, 2 widowed hearts learned they could still waltz amid thunder and find each other exactly on the downbeat. Chapter 4: A Secret in the Attic. Dawn crept across Lavender Ridge like a shy bridesmaid lifting the veil. Pale gold rays slipped between curtains, slid over 2 intertwined figures in room 207, and politely cleared its throat. Lillian Brooks opened one eye, found her head still nestled in the hollow beneath Charles Bennett's collarbone, and smiled, a small, startled thing, like finding fresh violets after frost. Charles stirred next, instinctively tightening his arm. When morning blur sharpened into memory, he looked down at the woman curled against him and felt that curious blue, equal parts wonder and disbelief spread through his chest. Widowers, he reminded himself, didn't he expect encore romances, much less ones written during plumbing crises? A soft knock rattled the door. "Housekeeping." They parted a reluctant, wordless separation before Lillian called, "Just a moment." She slipped into the bathroom while Charles accepted a tray laden with coffee, grapefruit halves, and a note from the coordinator. Plumbers 8 at noon. Ceremony rehearsal 9 a.m. sharp in ballroom. Denise. When Lillian emerged, robe cinched, he handed her the coffee. Their fingers met. Sparks were getting predictable. She sipped, murmured thanks, and they shared the tray at the foot of the bed like college roommates who somehow aged into elegance. "I dreamt we were 20, she said. He chuckled. "I dreamt my knees could still sprint a mile." Reality rehearsal in an hour. "And pipe repair," he added. The unspoken question hovered separate rooms afterward. They let it hover unfinished. Rehearsal passed with military efficiency, partly because Charles quietly rearranged the usher's cue cards and partly because Lillian's steady voice soothed the bridal party's jitters. By 10, Denise dismissed everyone for a 2-hour respite before hair, makeup and organizational chaos resumed. "Library?" Charles asked, hoping for privacy. "Library," Lillian agreed, same hope. The resort library occupied an 1,890 carriage house converted into a sanctuary of oak shelves and Tiffany lamps. Rainscarred journals, leader-bound novels, and first-edition poetry lined the walls like old soldiers standing at attention. While Lillian gravitated to the poetry alcove, Charles meandered to a display of historic photographs, black and white snapshots from the resort's earliest years, socialites in close hats, soldiers on leave, activists holding placards. One image snagged him: a 1970s crowd outside Atlanta City Hall, banner reading "Equal Pay Now." Front row, a young woman with a megaphone, afro tallowed by sunlight. Charles leaned closer, could be sworn she looked like Margaret, his late wife, but younger, unfiltered by adulthood. "Find something?" Lillian asked, stepping beside him. He hesitated. "Just déjà vu." An elderly librarian, Mrs. Dorothea Green, shuffled over, admiring our Hivo Rights exhibit. "Most of those negatives were found in the attic last month." "Attic?" Lillian's ears perked. Nothing stirred a corrector soul like a dusty trove. "Indeed," Mrs. Green beamed. "We recataloguing boxes of letters, banners, pamphlets. Would you care to see? We accept volunteers." Lillian and Charles exchanged glances, the kind that required no words. "Led the way," Charles said. A narrow servant's staircase snagged behind a bookshelf, ascending 2 flights to a hatch door. Mrs. Green produced an iron key the size of optimism and unlocked it. Hinges squealed, dust motes swirled, and they stepped into a yawning attic smelling of cedar, ink and secrets. Slanted beams crisscrossed overhead, sunlight pierced nothos, spotlighting cardboard boxes labeled by decade: 60s, 70s, 80s. In the center, an antique steamer trunk sat half open, ribboned with cobwebs. "Take your time," Mrs. Green said, gloves on the table. "I'll fetch lemonade." She retreated, door thumping shut. Alone beneath the rafters, Lillian slipped on cotton gloves, heart drumming. Charles followed suit. First box, yellowed pamphlets from Vietnam War protests. Second, Polaroids of Disco Vera fundraisers. Their hands moved in quiet cadence until Lillian gasped. She held a glossy A10 of 4 people standing arm in arm at a 1,972 voter registration drive. She recognized herself, 22, hair in braids, optimism shining like sunrise. Beside her, Thomas Brooks. On his other side, Margaret, Charles whispered, staring at the young woman who was indeed his late wife. And beside her himself, mustache and all. The quartet beamed at the camera as if about to change the world. Lillian's knees buckled. She perched atop a crate. "I remember that day," she murmured, "but I never realized that we all stood together." He finished, equally stunned. Memory rippled, hearing a soprano voice urge volunteers, noticing a petite woman drafting press releases by hand. "I was so nervous giving my first speech," Lillian recalled. "Margaret lent me her throat lozenges. I was certain I debauched the legal briefing." Thomas cracked a joke. "Ease the tension," Charles said. They shared wonder-struck smiles. Fate, apparently, wrote long looping sentences. They dug deeper. In a manila envelope lay correspondence, carbon copy letters among the 4 organizers planning rallies, raising bail money, exchanging book recommendations. Lillian unfolded one dated May 4, 1972. "Dear Thomas, if you hesitate another week, you will lose your chance. Lillian is brilliant and she cares for you. Our generation waits on no man. Propose now or regret it. Margaret." Lillian's hand flew to her mouth. She pushed him to propose. He did 2 weeks later. Charles felt unexpected wetness in his eyes. That was Margaret, catalyst in human form. Underneath, another letter addressed to Dear Charlie. "Tonight's rally made you glow. Speak more often, your voice commands runes. And remember, if you wish for courage, borrow some from Lillian." Margaret. He chuckled softly. She always compared me to others who intimidated me. Lillian squeezed his forearm. Looks like we've been orbiting for half a century. They rifled further until a leather-bound journal emerged. Initials T.B. embossed. Thomas's handwriting filled pages, meeting notes, musings, sketches of protest banners. One entry stopped their breath. July 9, 1972. Margaret and I discussed how Lillian and Charles might complement each other as fire and logic. We joked about being matchmakers if destiny dragged its heels. Funny thought, but life works oddly. Charles exhaled. Odd. Our spouses tried to set us up while we were busy marrying them, she added, half laughing, half crying. For a long moment, they sat amid dusty boxes, hands clasped, processing the improbable geometry of their lives intersecting twice, once missed, once seized. Mrs. Green returned, balancing lemonade. Find anything riveting? Lillian wiped a tear. Managed. History is never silent, just waiting for listeners. Mrs. Green nodded sagely. Document whatever you wish. We plan an exhibit next spring. Charles photographed key letters with his phone for personal reflection. Lillian carefully reboxed items, labeling them future exhibit Brooks Bennett collection. While cataloging, she found a slim cassette tape labeled Unity Rally August 1273. Wonder if the resort still owns a player. I believe the library does, Mrs. Green said. They descended with the tape, hearts lighter yet denser. On a mahogany console they found a dusty cassette deck. Charles pressed play. Static crackled, then a male voice, Thomas welcoming crowd. Lillian's throat tightened. Another voice followed, Margaret reading Langston Hughes. When recordings ended, silence swelled like an embrace. Lillian laid her head on Charles's shoulder. He kissed her hair first and she didn't flinch. Lunch hour had slipped away unnoticed. Denise's frantic text buzzed, where are my VIP readers? Run throughout in 15. Lillian closed the deck, wiped eyes, and they hurried toward the ballroom, still floating between decades. The run through went smoothly, pillow of nostalgia under every syllable Lillian spoke. Observers noted her luminous poise. They didn't realize she channeled two ghosts cheering from attic rafters. Afterward, the resort plumber cornered them. Good news, pipes fixed early. We all move your bags ASAP. Charles thanked him but glanced at Lillian, wordlessly asking, do we part tonight? She answered with a gentle finger on his wrist. Could we keep 207 for one more night? Strictly for continuity. The plumber shrugged. Fine by me, keeps housekeeping simple. They shared grateful sighs, relief season with excitement. During cocktail preparations, Dwight the journalist prowled again, brandishing a tablet. Judge Bennett, comments on your shared activism roots with Mrs. Brooks? Charles frowned. How? Library volunteer texted me. Dwight grinned. Small world. Lillian stepped forward, spine regal. Those archives honor a movement bigger than gossip. If you write anything, write about that generation as sacrifices. Dwight, a smirk, faltered. Hard to sell papers with virtue. Then sell books, Charles deadpanned. They left Dwight nursing his deflated clickbait. Evening descended, clear storm clouds finally exhausted. Lanterns dotted pathways, breeze carried rosemary and damp cedar. Backyard fire pits crackled. Mason found them, eyes bright. I heard about the attic discovery. You okay, Nana? She hugged him. Never better. Your grandpa and Judge Bennett's wife left us homework. Mason smiled, sensing chapters he hadn't read but trusting the happy ending. Tessa and I owe them and you two a dance tomorrow. Later, in room 207, Lillian produced a bottle of tawny port she'd secretly purchased at the gift shop. For our archivist's courage, they poured 2 small glasses, sat on the balcony under crystal stars. Margaret told Thomas to propose. Lillian mused. She played Cupid like a professional. And Thomas encouraged her to nudge me, Charles replied. Matchmakers crisscrossing. Lillian tilted her head on his shoulder. Do you think they'd approve of this? Unquestionably. They drafted the blueprint. She exhaled, a tremor of joy. I want to honor them tomorrow. Maybe weave their names into my reading. He squeezed her hand. They all hear. Silence settled, comforting, not empty. The lavender field hummed with nocturnal insects. Somewhere distant, a lone owl hooted approval. Inside, they changed without closing doors, comfort now stitched into routine. When they slipped beneath covers, no pillow stood sentinel. Do you still feel alive? She whispered against his shoulder. Living seems an understatement. He kissed her forehead, then, emboldened, found her lips gentle, lingering, a promise in present tense. She answered equal parts yes and finally. Later, as sleep nudged them, Lillian thought of destiny as patience, how it stored evidence in attics and waited 5 decades for the right storm, the right plumbing fiasco, to reveal it. She drifted off, imagining Margaret laughing somewhere, Thomas applauding, and the cassette tape rewinding to play again. On the balcony table, 2 empty port glasses reflected starlight. Outside, lavender swayed like soft applause. Inside, room 207 glowed with steady breathing and the quiet certainty that tomorrow's wedding would celebrate more than one love story. But secrets rarely stay hushed. In the hallway, Dwight Selby crouched by the door, recorder light blinking, a journalist refusing to let virtue outrank virality. His grin sharpened as he crept away. Storms apparently could brew without thunder. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The Midnight Walkout. The wedding morning arrived clear and bright, as if some cosmic stagehand had finally swept away every last cloud. Sunlight spilled through stained glass windows, painting kaleidoscopes across the lodge corridors. Birds rehearsed arias outside room 207, unaware that humans inside were practicing their own fragile harmonies. Lillian Brooks slipped into a dove-gray dress, simple and elegant, the kind that whispered presence instead of shouting for it. Charles, already dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, fastened her pearl clasp with careful fingers that grazed the nape of her neck just long enough to make them both inhale. "Ready to steal the show?" he teased. She smirked. "We are background characters today, counselor, nothing more." He offered his arm, she took it, and they left the room feeling less like background and more like an overture nobody had scripted but everyone might remember. The indoor ceremony unfolded beneath vaulted ceilings draped in sheets of ivory silk. Rows of family and friends turned into a flower-scented sea. Lillian's Naruto reading landed like a benediction, her voice steady, warm, and if you knew what to listen for, laced with the names Margaret and Thomas, woven seamlessly into the Spanish lines. Charles wiped a discreet tear, blaming dust when Gia handed him a tissue. By 2 o'clock vows were exchanged, Mason kissed Tessa, cameras clicked, and champagne corks ricocheted like miniature fireworks. Charles and Lillian posed for photos, bending to catch bouquets and smooth train hems, every so often stealing glances that said, "We did not overshadow, we simply added light." But light attracts moths. At 4:30, while guests milled in the terrace garden for cocktail hour, a hush spread faster than perfume. Phones vibrated, screens illuminated faces. In pockets of murmurs, one name surfaced: Dwight Selby. Charles noticed first a cluster of groomsmen staring at a tablet. Brows furrowed, he excused himself, edged closer, and read the headline blaring across an Atlanta Journal-Constitution digital exclusive. Evil Wright's sweethearts or scandal? Widowed judge and philanthropist reignite 50-year secret romance at grandkids' wedding. Below, grainy images from the attic and last night a slow dance were stitched beside insinuations. Was their original spark hidden behind their respective marriages? Did their spouses know? The article quoted anonymous resort staff and archival sources, read Dwight himself suggesting that Charles and Lillian had been more than comrades back in 1972. Charles felt his heart jackhammer. He closed the browser, throat thick. Across the lawn, Lillian accepted congratulations from an elderly cousin when a bridesmaid thrust her phone forward. "Auntie, did you see this?" Lillian's eyes widened at the headline. Then the subtext. The air suddenly felt too thin to breathe. Denise cornered them beneath the rose arbor 30 minutes later. "I am fielding calls from local television crews," she hissed. "The couple's hashtag is exploding." "We never spoke to journalists," Lillian said, voice tight. "Dwight doesn't he need permission for clickbait?" Charles muttered. Denise massaged her temples. "Mason and Tessa are holding up, but the spotlight is shifting. Can you two maybe disappear for an hour? Cool the narrative?" Disappear. The word tasted like exile. "Of course," Lillian answered instantly. "It is their day." Charles nodded agreement, though the injustice burned. Denise exhaled in relief. "I'll stall reporters." They retreated to the quiet of the herb garden. Rosemary scent soothing frayed nerves. For a moment, neither spoke. Cicadas droned overhead like distant generators. Lillian broke first. 50 years of integrity, and one opportunist smears it in an afternoon. He reached for her hands. "Truth still stands, Lillian. But perception drives history books. My philanthropic board already monitors press mentions. If they believe she swallowed, I can't let them tarnish Thomas's memory. Nor Margaret's, nor my pending ethics appointment, he added with a rueful sigh. I am scheduled for confirmation next month. Political vultures will feast. A silence heavy enough to bow Lavender's stem settled, and Lillian straightened. We have to neutralize this. He lifted an eyebrow. Sue for defamation? Would drag it out. Dwight wants noise. We give him silence. Separate statements tonight. Clarifying timeline. Then we maintain distance until the story dies. Distance. The syllables felt like glass splinters. You proposing we detach, he said quietly. I am proposing we protect what matters, she answered, voice fragile but resolute. He released her hands, stepping back as if geography could be willed. He looked away, jaw flexing. Understood. Evening reception commenced inside the Grand Marquis at 6. Lanterns glowed. Violinists played, but tension coiled beneath every pleasantry. Charles stood near the bar, nursing sparkling water, scarcely tasting it. Across the tent Lillian chatted with trustees. Smile impeccably polite, heart scraping raw. At 7:15 Charles spotted Dwight breezing in, camera hanging predator-like. Charles marched over. UV printed false insinuations, he said, careful but firm. Dwight smirked. I printed curiosity. Readers connect dots. Retract it. Bring me evidence of inaccuracy, judge. He raised his camera, smile. Charles snatched the lens upward. Another photo and I sue. Dwight stepped back. Threats don't suit you. He fliked his business card onto the bar. Call my editor, or Dante, internet never forgets. Across the room, Lillian watched Charles' elevated voice, Dwight's satisfied grin, and a half-dozen guests filming on phones, optics unraveling. Her lungs tightened. She wove through tables, placing a calming hand on Charles' sleeve. May I speak to Dwight alone, she asked. Charles hesitated, then nodded. Dwight followed Lillian to a side corridor. Look, she began, your story hurts real people. 2 families gathered here to celebrate. Which is why it is trending, he cut in. America loves mature romance. Tossin Tyvo writes nostalgia. You've got share bait. She steadied herself. Dwight, I respected your cousin enough to show up. Read poetry, share joy. If you have an ounce of decency, you'll retract implications of infidelity. He shrugged. Print as scheduled, online as viral. Genius out. Her shoulders slumped. Then I'll give you a better angle, a statement denying any past affair. Praising our late spouse's clarifying timeline. He tapped notes. Fine. Email me tonight. He turned away. When she returned, Charles had vanished. A ripple of worry moved through her until Aunt Marjorie pointed. He went lakeside. Dear said he needed air. Outside, twilight draped the resort in violet hush. She followed stone paths until she found him on the gazebo steps. Jacket off, tie loosened, staring at dark water reflecting early stars. May I, she asked, gesturing to sit. He nodded, eyes still on the lake. I talked to Dwight, she said softly. He'll print our clarification. Rumors keep the ad revenue rolling, he answered flatly. She inhaled the cool night. Charles, about distance, it is temporary. After heat dies down. He turned, pain naked. I've been alone 9 years. Last night I thought finally someone sees me again. Now you suggest retreat. Not because I want to, she pleaded. Because others will weaponize us. He shook his head, stood. I spent decades telling young lawyers. Choose courage over optics. Perhaps I shouldn't abandon that advice because of one headline. She rose too. And I've spent decades shielding nonprofits from scandal. If donors walk, entire literacy programs collapse. Courage doesn't pay printing costs. Then we re at impasse. Her voice wavered. I refuse to risk your appointment. And I refuse to lose you over public squeals. A brittle silence. Finally he whispered, so what happens next? A violin swell drifted from the marquee, carrying the first notes of their slow dance song. Fate mocking. Tears pricked Lillian's eyes. We protect the kids' happiness tonight. Tomorrow we'll see. He exhaled, defeated. Tomorrow. They returned separately, performed smiles, toasted with cider instead of champagne. Only Mason glimpsed the frost in their distance. His worried glance trailed them through bouquet tosses and cake cutting. At 11:47 p.m., reception lights dimmed, guests trickled out. Lillian found Charles outside the lodge entrance, thanking ballet staff. His expression looked carved from granite. Room 207, she asked quietly. He nodded once. They ascended in silence, each rehearsing speeches that calcified in the throat. Inside the room, luggage sat half-packed, housekeeping anticipating morning checkout. The poetry anthology lay on the desk. 2 different lives seemed to flicker, one where they laughed over port, one where fear barricaded doors. Lillian perched on the bed's edge. Write this statement together? He retrieved a legal pad. They drafted sentences: friendship for 50 years, spouses supportive, no impropriety. Each phrase felt clinical, slicing warmth from memory. When finished, she closed her laptop, scheduled the email to Dwight, and stared at the send confirmation like a verdict. Midnight chimed on her phone. Charles gathered the remaining pillows, laid them back into the old divide. She watched, heart buckling. I thought we retired that wall, she said, voice barely audible. He placed the last pillow, straightened. So did I. But maybe we need it temporarily. Tears blurred her sight. Temporary walls become permanent if you stop noticing them. He swallowed. What do you want, Lillian? I want Thomas and Margaret to be proud. I want Masoness wedding hashtags to be about love, not rumors. And her voice cracked. I want you. His features softened, hand twitching toward her, then retreating. Then trust that love can survive caution. A long aching beat. She rose, walked to the balcony doors. Palms pressing cool glass, stars shimmered indifferently. When she turned, Charles had slipped into the bathroom. She could hear sink water, toothbrush hushing. She opened the closet, retrieved her travel tote, and began to pack, silent as snowfall. Only essentials: phone charger, reading glasses, scarf Thomas had once gifted. She left the Neruda book on his pillow. Before exiting, she wrote a note on the legal pad. Charlie, I am giving distance. The head started demands. If tomorrow you still wish for courage, find me. I'll be where the lavender meets the road. Oh. She placed the note atop the anthology, wiped tears, and slipped into the hall. Midnight corridors yawned empty except for distant elevator chime. She descended the servants' stairs, heart hammering louder than footsteps. Outside, cool air kissed damp cheeks. She walked past silent cottages, beyond the lavender field shimmering silver. At the gravel drive, she called a late-night car service. While waiting, she inhaled the herb-scented darkness and murmured to unseen spirits, "Forgive me, I am protecting him." Charles emerged from the bathroom, towel in his face. An empty room answered. At first he assumed she fetched water, but the stillness felt wrong. Then he saw the pillow wall intact and the Neruda lying like a plea. The note peeked from its pages. He read it once, twice, pressure mounting in his chest. Where the lavender meets the road. Without hesitation he yanked on sneakers, grabbed his phone and car keys, and sprinted into the hallway, ignoring protests from aged knees. Down the staircase, two at a time. Through the lobby where night clerk eyed him curiously, out into the cool midnight. He scanned the drive. No sign. Lavender stretched in ghostly rows. Moonlit. A pair of headlights in the distance crested the hill. Ride chair arriving. He bolted toward the field, dodging sprigs, heart pounding, courtroom closing argument speed. Lillian, he called, voice tearing the hush. She stood near the resort sign, tote in hand, silhouetted by approaching car lights. At his voice she froze. Please don't leave, he shouted, breath ragged. Not like this. She turned, eyes glassy. Charles. The car rolled closer, engine idling. The driver leaned out. Brooks. Charles reached her, clasped her shoulders. I am here and I choose courage. Tears spilled freely now. The article, your appointment, your reputation. Be damned if truth boast or rumor. His hands trembled but held firm. Stay, let us fight together. The driver cleared his throat. Trip cancelled. Lillian looked from Charles to the open car door, back to Charles. The lavender around them rustled, secrets. Finally she exhaled a shaky laugh. Trip cancelled. The driver tipped invisible hat and turned the vehicle around. Charles pulled her into an embrace fierce enough to stitch wounds. She buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing equal parts relief and exhaustion. When her breathing steady, he lifted her chin. Tomorrow we give a statement on our terms. Together. She nodded. Together. He offered his arm. They walked back along the gravel path lit by moonbeams, lavender brushing their calves like forgiving hands. At the field's edge Lillian paused. You really ran through a meadow at midnight for me? He chuckled, kissing her forehead. Knees protested but heart overruled. They re-entered the lodge, past the night clerk who pretended to read but Olden T helped smiling. In the elevator, Charles pressed 2. Lillian leaned against him, fingers entwined. Room 207 awaited, pillow wall still upright like an obsolete monument. Charles regarded it, then calmly began dismantling pillows, stacking them in the wardrobe. Evidence, he said, that walls can be removed faster than they rebuilt. She climbed into bed, patting space beside her. He joined, wrapping arms around her as though reclaiming contested territory. We still stealing the show, she whispered, half laughing. Let them watch, he murmured, kissing the corner of her smile. Outside, lavender swayed under moonlit breeze, no longer a hiding place but a witness. Inside, 2 seniors rewrote the clickbait headline in real time: courageous widowers choose love over optics. And somewhere in digital newsrooms, Dwight Selby refreshed page views, unaware his story's ending had just been edited without his consent. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. Truth on the Terrace. Sun rose on Wedding +1 Sunday with the kind of theatrical serenity that made last night's drama feel like a fever dream. Golden light spilled across Lavender Ridge, turning dew into diamonds and bathing every rooftop in quiet absolution. Inside room 207, Lillian Brooks woke first. She did not flinch at the unfamiliar shoulder beneath her cheek. She simply listened to Charles Bennett's even breathing and let the certainty of their midnight decision settle like a warm quilt. At 7:15, Charles stirred, eyes opening to find Lillian already watching him with a smile equal parts tenderness and mischief. "Morning, Marathon Man," she whispered. He winced good-naturedly. "My knees filed a grievance, but my heart overruled again." They shared lazy laughter, then the practical world tapped phone alerts piling up texts from board members, clerks, cousins, and one from Denise marked urgent. Charles scanned quickly, brow furrowing. Local TVG truck arrives at 10, reporters setting up by the terrace fountain. Lillian pushed hair behind ear. "Then we keep our word statement together. On our terms. Terrace at 10. He kissed the back of her hand. "Ready to lawyer this?" She squeezed and cured it. 8:30 a.m. Orchard dining room. Breakfast buzzed heavier than espresso. Guests for all phones. Whispers darted like hummingbirds. When Charles and Lillian entered arm in arm, conversation paused, then erupted in low murmurs. Mason and Tessa waved them over to a corner booth already fortified with cinnamon rolls. Mason spoke first, eyes earnest. "Nana, Judge, sorry about the article. We never wanted our day to drag you into headlines." Lillian upped her grandson's cheek. "Baby stories come and go. Love stays. Today we focus on love, yours, ours, everyone's." Tessa sighed with relief. "Interview crews keep asking for comment. Denise says you two have a plan?" Charles nodded. 10 o'clock on the terrace. "We'll handle press. You concentrate on brunch festivities." Mason shot a grateful grin. "You two are superheroes." Lillian chuckled. "Superheroes who require carbs." She bit into a roll. Icing smearing her dignity, she licked it off without shame. Charles watched, adoring amusement wrinkling his eyes. 9:40 a.m. Lakeside Terrace. Denise paced like a field marshal prepping for battle. A cluster of reporters, all badges and boom mics, collected by the tiered fountain. Dwight Selby stood among them, phone aloft, reciting metrics: 37,000 shares overnight. Charles and Lillian arrived hand in hand, impeccably composed. Lillian wore a cream linen suit paired with a lavender silk blouse. Charles favored a slate blazer, no tie, intentional softness. Denise exhaled relief and clipped a wireless cloth mic to each lapel. "Ground rules," Charles announced, voice steady, one statement, 5 questions, then we return to private celebration. Reporters nodded, some disappointed by the limit but eager nonetheless. Cameras rolled. Lillian stepped to the marble balustrade, gardenias framing her like allies. She began. "Good morning. I am Lillian Brooks, philanthropist, grandmother and widow of the incomparable Thomas Brooks. Beside me is Judge Charles Bennett, widower of the formidable Margaret Bennett. We addressed yesterday's article insinuating an affair in the 1970s. Let us offer facts." Charles took over, baritone resonant. "In 1972 we stood on the same protest stage once. That was the sole meeting before we each fell in love with and married our respective spouses." Lillian continued. "Our spouses, unbeknownst to us, tried playing matchmaker then. Destiny declined until this weekend, long after they passed. Any suggestion of impropriety to shunners for devoted partners who fought for justice together. Charles, we rediscovered that shared history yesterday in the resort attic. It filled us with gratitude, not guilt." Lillian, soft smile, as two single adults with full support of our families, we are free to explore companionship. We intend to do so openly, no rumor required. She intertwined her fingers with Charles's, lifting their joined hands for every lens to capture. Applause rose from wedding guests gathered behind the rope line, from gardeners watching over topiary hedges, even from Denise, who forgot professional neutrality. Dwight fired the first question. "Judge Bennett, is your pending ethics appointment at risk because of perceived misconduct?" Charles met his gaze. "Integrity guides my life and career. Today we demonstrated transparency. I welcome any review board inquiries." Second reporter, "Ms. Brooks, some donors worry controversy may overshadow your literacy foundation." Lillian responded calm. "My board prizes truth and resilience, the very lessons our programs teach children. They can rest assured both remain intact." Third question came from a young intern. "What advice do you have for people finding love later in life?" Lillian's eyes shimmered. "Keep your heart well lit. Opportunity may wander decades before knocking again." Fourth, "What about the viral headline?" Charles glanced at Dwight. "Headlines evolve. We trust you'll all update yours to reflect accuracy." Fifth and final, "Will you dance for us like last night?" Laughter rippled. Charles bowed slightly. "This afternoon, at the family brunch. You will find us on the floor. Bring cameras, capture joy instead of scandal." He signaled Denise, who stepped forward. "Thank you, everyone." Interview concluded. 10:25 a.m. Terrace steps. Cameras powered down, reporters dispersed. Dwight lingered. Lillian approached him, gaze firm but gentle. "You hold power," she said. "Use it well." Dwight shifted, a wrinkle of conscience surfacing. "I misread the room. Sensation sells." Charles offered a measured nod. "Truth endures longer." He handed Dwight a flash drive. Contained scanned letters from the attic. Civil rights planning, unity speeches. "That's your story." Dwight blinked. "May I quote you?" "Quote the letters," Lillian said. "Give young readers heroes who did the work." Dwight swallowed. "Genuine this time. Thank you." He walked off, already drafting new angles. Noon family brunch. Rainlean's sunlight bathed the marquee. The jazz quartet returned, upbeat swing echoing across lawn. When the band pivoted to Ella Fitzgerald's Cheek to Cheek, Charles stood, extended a hand to Lillian. "Public request." She rose, laughter spilling. They glided onto the makeshift dance floor, no tension now, only dazzling ease. Phones recorded, but lens felt benign, almost celebratory. Mason whooped. Aunt Marjorie dabbed tears with napkin. 37 of the weekend. Mid-twirl, Charles whispered, knees cooperating. Lillian twinkled back, heart commanding. They finished with a modest dip that nonetheless earned thunderous applause. As they straightened, Charles pressed a quick, affectionate kiss to Lillian as tempo audible gasps, then cheers. Dia dashed over, slapping 2 green wristbands on them again. Status updated, officially adorable. Two o'clock p.m. Willow Arbor Path. After brunch they slipped away for a slow stroll beneath willow branches that whispered hush hush hush. Lillian leaned into Charles's side. "Feel lighter?" "Like briefs dismissed with prejudice." She chuckled. "My board chair texted good press conference. Carry on. I think we re-safe." He exhaled. "My confirmation aide messaged committee impressed by transparency. Politics bewilder me. But I'll take the win." They paused where sunlight dappled bench slats. Charles reached into jacket pocket. Produced a tiny velvet box, not a ring, but a silver lapel pin shaped like intertwined lavender sprigs. "Symbolic," he said shyly. "If you'll wear it, sign of intention." Lillian's eyes glistened. "It's beautiful." She pinned it beside her pearl brooch. Left fingers linger over both. "And this is for you." She removed Thomas's silk scarf from her tote. Draped it inside Charles's suit breast pocket so the edge peeked out. "A reminder 2 love stories paved our road." He kissed her gently. There beneath whispering willows. No cameras, no onlookers. Just the hush 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 approving. "5:30 p.m. Library Carriage House." They returned to attic boxes, this time joined by Mason, Tessa, and a hired digitization team. Together they scanned letters, cataloged banners, laughed at vintage slang. Raycon. Tessa suggested a joint exhibit at her arts center. Mason volunteered his startup as tech for an online archive. Charles watched Lillian direct volunteers, passion igniting her eyes, and felt that earlier pin prick his chest again, this time warm. 8 o'clock p.m. Farewell bonfire. Dust draped a watercolor sky. Guests gathered around fire pits for s'mores. Farewell hugs, fly check chatter. Charles and Lillian sat on a split log, knees touching, toasting marshmallows that promptly ignited. They laughed, blew them out. Dwight approached hesitantly, copy of Tomorrow's paper proof in hand. "May I?" Charles nodded. Headline read: Activism, Loss, and Late Blooming Love, the real story of Brooks Bennett. Subhead: From civil rights allies to hope for every generation. Lillian scanned relief. Blooming. "Good work, Dwight." He swallowed pride. "Thank you for the second chance." He retreated into night. Aunt Marjorie tottered over next, clutching embroidered chinky. "Had to see you two before lights out. Margaret babysat my twins once. You do her proud." She kissed both cheeks, shuffled away humming. A comfortable silence returned, broken only by crackle of wood. Lillian rested her head on Charles's shoulder. "Think we'll ever be background characters again?" He squeezed her hand. "Background to the world, maybe. Foreground to each other." She sighed contentedly. "Foreground it is." Stars dusted the sky. Fire embers glowed. Lavender fields swayed, this time not hiding but heralding every fledgling promise drifting up with the smoke. Tomorrow checkout, next week committees and board meetings. 1,000 logistics waited. But on the terrace earlier, they'd chosen truth. Now, by firelight, they chose something quieter yet brighter, the unhurried building of whatever came next. Charles turned, eyes reflecting flame. Dinner next Friday, real restaurant, real city, no plumbing emergencies. Lillian grinned. "Only if they're us dancing. Non-negotiable." They sealed it with a marshmallow sticky kiss, sweet, slightly charred, perfectly imperfect. Much later, when resort lamps blinked out one by one, room 207 glowed soft again. Pillow wall long gone, suitcase lids standing open to pack separate lives now slightly overlapping. Before sleep, Lillian placed the silver lavender pin on bedside table next to Charles's watch. Side by side, two pieces of metal catching moonlight, promising morning. She whispered into darkness, heart well lit. Charles pulled her closer. Opportunity found its way. Outside, wind rustled petals, carrying truth across terrace, through halls, into every ear willing to listen. Love, at any age, needs only courage and a clear morning to step into the sun. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. Sunrise at Suite 409. Checkout day dawned crisp and honey gold, the kind of early April sunrise that makes even seasoned souls feel brand new. Light seeped through room 207's curtains, brushing across two half-packed suitcases, a tangled duvet, and the unmistakable outline of Charles Bennett and Lillian Brooks still stitched together by sleep and steady breath. At 6:10, Lillian opened her eyes first. For a delicious beat, she simply watched Charles' lashes silver in dawn. Mouth softened from courtroom lines. The weekend of storms, headlines, and midnight marathons felt suspended in that hush. She pressed a soft kiss to his shoulder. He stirred, smiled without opening his eyes, and whispered, objection sustained. She laughed, hushed. Good morning, counselor. Good morning, curator of my sanity. He blinked awake, checking the clock. Checkout is 11. Denise moved us to suite 409 for late departure, some VIP courtesy. We gain an extra few hours. Suite 409, she repeated, tasting possibility. One last sunrise in a new room. Very symbolic. Shall we enjoy it properly? Define properly. Coffee, balcony, no phones. Approved. They rose, choreographing around each other with the ease of seasoned dancers. Lillian pulled on a linen wrap dress the color of dawn. Charles donned chinos and an Oxford, sleeves rolled, collar unbuttoned just enough to hint at rebellion. By 7, bellhop Mateo arrived to transfer luggage up one floor. Congratulations on the feature, he chirped, gesturing to his phone clock screen showing Dwight's rebranded article now splashed across national feeds. People love a happy ending. Charles tipped him, amused. Ending? We're still drafting chapter titles. Mateo winked. Well, Suite 409 has the best view for sequels. "7:20 a.m. Suite 409. The elevator dinged onto the top corridor, fragrant with polished cedar. Suite 409 occupied the corner double doors, etched glass. Discreet brass plaque. Lillian slid the keyard door swung wide to reveal an airy retreat twice the size of 207. Astrolasuit windows framed rolling lavender fields bathed in sunrise rose gold. A sitting room boasted tufted couches, while a canopied king bed, no pillow wall in sight, waited like a stage. Charles whistled low. All this for lingering seniors. Senior, yes, lingering, absolutely. Lillian floated toward the balcony. French doors opened to a private terrace wrapped in wisteria vines. Below, gardeners cut dew-wet stems for checkout bouquets. A silver coffee service sat on a teak table. Lillian poured 2 cups, handed him one. They linked like conspirators. Agenda, he asked. Observe sunrise, savor caffeine, then imagine life beyond Lavender Ridge. Shall we strategize timelines? You have foundation work in Atlanta. I split months between Savannah and D.C. She breathed steam. I love trains. Savannah to Atlanta is 4 hours reading time. He nodded. Plus, I've been considering partial retirement from the bench if confirmation goes through. Teach ethics seminars, consult. I could base in Atlanta every other week. Logistics solved. She smiled into her cup. Emotional terms. He set coffee down, faced her fully. Exclusive, transparent, adventurous. I counter with playful and interdependent, not who-dependent. Motion to adopt. Seconded. They sealed it with a slow sunrise kiss, mellow, certain, unhurried. 8:05 a.m. Lavender Field Path. They left Suite 409 temporarily to walk the property one final time. Mist still coasted over rows of purple blooms. Bees buzzed sleepy hellos. Charles carried her scarf against chill. Lillian carried his hand. Near the gazebo, they noticed staff erecting a new placard, Brooks Bennett Unity Garden coming spring. Mason approached, hammer in hand. Surprise, Nana. The resort loved your attic story so much they replanting a commemorative plot. Tessa designed it. Lillian's throat tightened. That is beautiful. Charles squeezed her hand. Best legal case I never argued. Mason winked. Figured your love needed permanent real estate. Guests can sit among lavender and read those letters we digitized. Your generation has flair, Lillian said, kissing her grandson's cheek. As they strolled back, Charles turned to her. Would you curate the exhibit opening with me? Summer, perhaps. Only if you give the keynote. "9 o'clock a.m. Suite 409 bathroom scarf tie chronicles. Back in the suite, they prepared for the farewell luncheon. Charles knotted a textured navy tie. Lillian approached, straightened the dimple precisely, then tucked Thomas a silk scarf into his breast pocket again. He watched her in mirror reflection. I admire how you honor him. And how you honor Margaret with every ethical choice, she replied. She secured a delicate gold necklace, gift from Thomas on their 40th anniversary. Charles clasped the chain for her, whispering, every symbol has room on this journey. "9:30 a.m. Balcony heart to heart. With 30 minutes before luncheon call, they returned to terrace chairs. Lillian exhaled. Yesterday we faced truth publicly. Today we face it privately. He turned, concern flickering. Something on your mind? My board chair offered a sabbatical. Says the foundation can manage, but threats may arise again. I told her I'll take a month recharge, digitize archives. Maybe travel. She met his eyes. Would you consider joining? Paris. Margaret's favorite jazz clubs still exist. Charles's lips parted, surprise giving way to joy. I own unused Delta miles. Paris it is. She grinned. Then it has settled. He sobered gently. One more truth last night while you slept. I drafted something. He pulled from pocket a folded page handwritten. Not vows but clothes. Her breath caught as she unfolded parchment. I, Charles, promise to guard your voice, laugh at dawn, argue only for justice, and dance at inconvenient hours. She looked up misty. I accept. She flipped page, added beneath. I, Lillian, promise to curate your wonder, kiss your scars, rally your courage, and keep every sunrise interesting. They signed initials. No rings, no officiant, just sunrise, coffee, ink, and intention. 10 o'clock a.m. Farewell luncheon. Guests gathered on the veranda where magnolias perfumed the air. Denise handed out lavender cupcakes. A string quartet played in departure gift bags lined tables. Charles and Lillian entered together, chatter hushed then swelled with warm applause. Marjorie declared, look at those lovebirds glowing brighter than the sun. Dwight appeared, camera lowered. Off the record, thank you. My revised story is trending for different reasons now, love after loss. Use it wisely, Lillian reminded. He nodded, lesson learned. During the meal, Mason tapped a glass for attention. Before everyone satters. My bride and I want to thank two people who turned a room mix-up into a master class on perseverance. He signaled staff. 2 boxes were delivered, hand-carved wood. Lillian opened hers, a fountain pen made from reclaimed library attic oak. Charles's held cufflinks inlaid with pressed lavender. Mason continued, may these help you sign and fasten many new adventures together. Camera shutters clicked, but for once the moment felt earned, not exploited. 11:45 a.m. Suite 409 checkout. Bellhop Mateo returned. Cars ready, Mr. Bennett. Charles scanned the suite, ensuring nothing left behind. Lillian tucked the fountain pen into her tote. She paused by the bed, smoothing faint wrinkles. Hard to believe 3 days rewrote decades. He wrapped arms around her waist from behind. Time obeys no statute of limitations where hearts are concerned. They took one last look from balcony, lavender stretching, Unity Garden sign gleaming, wedding guests waving luggage carts. Future beckoned like the highway ribbon beyond hills. "12:05 p.m. Front drive. A slate gray sedan purred at curb. As Mateo loaded bags, Mason and Tessa hurried over with boxed wedding cake. Emergency sugar for the road, Tessa said. Thank you, dear. Lillian hugged her. Charles shook Mason's hand. Your wedding changed more lives than you know. Mason grinned. We aim high. Valet opened rear door. Charles gestured for Lillian to enter first. She did, then suited to middle. He slid beside, and the door thumped closed, sound of a chapter turning. As car rolled down driveway, Lillian intertwined fingers. Suite 409's sunrise was spectacular. Next sunrise, Charles mused, maybe Paris rooftops. Or Savannah riverfront. Or your Atlanta balcony. They exchanged conspiratorial smiles, travelers newly equipped with shared map and limitless miles. 12:40 p.m. County Highway. Fields blurred into quilts of green and gold. Charles unboxed the cake. Carved 2 neat slices with plastic knife. They fed each other bites, laughing at icing smudges. Afterward, Lillian produced the oak fountain pen and the page of sunrise promises. Add one more line, she said, clicking nib. He thought, then wrote beneath signatures, wherever lavender grows, we will find it together. She kissed the ink before it dried. They settled back, shoulders touching. Charles opened Spotify, found the Blue Mitchell tune from their first dance. and let horns caress the car interior. Road hummed beneath tires. Psalm drifted, promises settled. Lillian rested her head on his shoulder. Suite 409 may retire, but Sunrise Club meets daily. He chuckled. Membership too, subject to expansion. We'll see. He closed his eyes a beat, savoring headlights of possibility. Outside, lavender rose eventually relinquished to pine, then city skylines peeking far ahead. But Suite 409's sunrise traveled with them, glowing in every glance, every joking elbow nudge, every comfortable silence that felt like home. 3:15 p.m. Interstate rest stop epilogue teaser. They exited for coffee. As Lillian waited in line, Charles noticed an elderly couple at a corner table, map spread, arguing playfully. The sight mirrored them decades ahead. He smiled, heart steady. Back in the car, Lillian handed him a cup. What is that grin? Foreshadowing, he said, kissed her knuckles. She laughed. Writer's term, I approve. 4:00 p.m. Atlanta city limits. Sky shifted to late afternoon amber. Traffic signs welcomed them. Charles dialed his assistant's schedule meeting with Ethics Committee Chair Wednesday. I have updates. He ended call, glanced at Lillian. Transparency, remember? Always. She dialed her board chair. About that sabbatical, I'd like to merge it with an archival exhibit initiative. Yes. With Judge Bennett. Budget estimate incoming. She hung up, triumphant. Collaboration approved. They exchanged high fives like teenagers. 4:30 p.m. Lillian's driveway. The sedan halted before a craftsman bungalow shaded by peach trees. Charles stepped out, opened her door. She rose, smooth travel grease dress. So, she said, quite, you will stay the night? Guest room has firm mattress. He chuckled. Only if you revoke pillow wall privileges. Revoked. Mateo unloaded luggage. Charles tipped, then retrieved Neruda anthology from front seat. He handed it to Lillian. Never returned your book. She pressed it to chest. It found its chapter. They walked up path, suitcase wheels humming like subdued applause. Before entering, Lillian stopped on porch, pulled him into a kiss flavored by travel coffee and cake icing. When they parted, she whispered, welcome home to whichever home we share next. He tapped his chest pocket where scarf rested. Always carrying home with me. They stepped inside, door closing on lavender-scented breeze, opening onto a room glowing with late-day sunlight and infinite pages waiting. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8, Vows of the Unexpected. 6 months later, Lavender Ridge Resort, Unity Garden grand opening. Lavender Ridge looked different now, yet utterly the same rolling hills hugging the horizon. Same scent of crushed rosemary rising from the herb paths. Same grand lodge beaming a welcome that felt like open arms. But subtle changes echoed everywhere. A new wing housed remote-controlled display rooms. Wrought iron wayfinding signs carried elegant script. Brooks Bennett collection directing visitors to exhibits that only months earlier had been dust-caked secrets in the attic. At the heart of these additions bloomed the Unity Garden, a crescent parcel carved between lavender fields and willow pond. Gravel paths curved around raised beds of purple sage, gardenias, and miniature roses. Bronze plaques quoted Margaret's speeches and Thomas's handwritten slogans. At the garden's center, an artful trellis bore intertwined initials LC. This Saturday in early September, guests arrived in shuttle vans, ticket stubs in hand, chatter laced with anticipation. They came for the grand opening of the Ival Rights exhibit, but rumors hinted a second purpose. Some insisted they'd glimpsed a jeweler's van. Others swore they heard strains of a string quartet during sound check. If Lavender Ridge had mastered anything, it was turning logistical accidents into legendary stories. A.M. Suite 409 revisited. Sunlight spilled through gauzy curtains onto mahogany floors of Suite 409, the scene of a sunrise that had rewritten 2 lives. Today it hummed again, but where coffee once waited on the terrace. A garment bag hung from the armoire, and a jewelry roll lay open on the settees. Lillian Brooks stood barefoot before an antique Hival mirror wearing a silk slip the color of champagne. Her silver hair flowed in soft waves, pinned at one temple by a lavender sprig barrette gifted by Tessa. On a nearby ballet stand rested a knee-length ivory dress, simple boat neckline. 3/4 sleeves, pockets because pockets, she had declared, were non-negotiable. Next to it, a lacy stole that once belonged to Margaret. Behind her, Tessa zipped up her own mauve bridesmaid dress, one of only 4 in the Meyer bridal party. How are you feeling, Nana 2.0? Like a 25-year-old thesis student who forgot to print her citations. Lillian chuckled softly, excited, terrified, in love. Tessa adjusted the lavender pin in Lillian's hair. You look radiant. Grandpa Thomas is probably fist-bumping Margaret right now. Lillian blinked away happy tears. Then let us not keep them waiting. Across the hall, suite 410. Charles Bennett tied his cufflinks lavender inlay from Mason. His tailored dove gray suit fit like a well-reasoned argument. Mason stood behind, knotting a slender purple tie. Steady hands for a startup coder, Charles observed. Mason grinned. Built an entire app with one hand while feeding a crying baby last week. Tie knots are childish play. He paused, eyes softening. You ready, Judge? Charles inhaled the warning. For once I am not rehearsing objections. On the dresser lay a slim leather box. Inside, 2 simple platinum bands nestled against velvet. Etched inside Lillian's heart well lit. Inside Charles's courage found you. "9:15 a.m. Exhibit Hall. Guests wound through glass displays, banners proclaiming equal pay now, cassette players looping recordings of rally speeches, digital touchscreens narrating timelines, photos of a 20-something Lillian with megaphone, a serious-eyed Charles in ill-fitting suit, a laughing Margaret passing out flyers, and Thomas sketching poster designs lined one wall like constellations of a long-ago galaxy. At a podium near the exit, Atlanta City Councilwoman Janice Whitmore introduced the Unity Garden dedication. The Brooks Bennett collection is more than a time capsule, it is evidence that activism is love in action. Applause echoed. She then invited the collection as curators and today a Scromer-inspiring couple to address the crowd at 10:30 sharp in the Garden Amphitheater. "10 a.m. Garden archway behind the scenes. A temporary white arbor formed an aisle entrance. Mason, Tessa, Dia, and childhood friend Victor gathered, each holding a small bundle of fresh lavender. They were joined by Denise, no clipboard, just tissues serving unofficial made off everything. Charles waited at the arch, hands folded. Floral designer Alma adjusted the bow beneath her pin to his lapel, a single sprig of sage and a tiny paper scroll, Thomas's rally speech snippet cut into a ribbon. Charles' closed eyes breathed aroma. Soft strings drifted from the quartet, an instrumental rendition of Blue Mitchell as I'll close my eyes. Guests filled curved stone seating, program cards in hand. No media frenzy this time. Dwight attended as friend, camera lowered by choice. The quartet set you to April Rain song. Under the arch, Lillian appeared on Mason's arm. Stole fluttering, ivory dress glowing against purple blooms. When Charles saw her, something in his chest performed a standing ovation. They met at trellis center. Mason kissed Lillian's cheek, whispered, "Love you, Nana," and stepped back. Dia handed Lillian a small bouquet tied with silk scarf ribbon, the same scarf Thomas once gifted, now repurposed as handle wrap. Councilwoman Whitmore officiated, microphone unnecessary in the intimate amphitheater. Family, friends, and curious bystanders who booked last-minute tickets, she began, earning soft laughter. We gather to witness vows forged not in haste but in decades of living, losing, learning, and most importantly finding. She spoke of second chances, of courage to love in public after years of private grief. Then she invited Charles and Lillian to share personal promises. Charles unfolded a small note card. "Lillian," he began, voice steadied by conviction, "I vow to question systems but never your worth, to advocate for your dreams as fiercely as I argue from the bench, and to safeguard mornings because that is when you smile at the sun like it as a grandchild eager for stories." Lillian's eyes shimmered. She read from her own card. "Charles, I vow to archive our laughter, curate our challenges, and publish our triumphs, footnotes included. I promise to dance with you when knees permit, and when they don't, to hold your hand so our hearts do the dancing." They exchanged rings, cool metal warming instantly to skin. Councilwoman Whitmore pronounced, "Partners in life, activism, and all future footnotes." The kiss that followed elicited cheers, hand laps, and at least one high-pitched yeses, courtesy of Gia. "10:45 a.m. Unity Garden reception. Bistro tables dotted the lawn, topped with linen runners embroidered with lavender sprigs. Waitstaff circulated, carrying trays of many sweet potato biscuits, sparkling peach cider, and espresso shots served in Dimetesque cups featuring engraved quotes from Margaret. Charles and Lillian greeted each table. Aunt Marjorie boasted, "I knew from the pillow wall incident this would happen." Dwight offered them a framed print of the reformed headline, "Love After Loss." Denise gifted a blank itinerary planner titled Joint Adventures, 2025-2035. By noon, speeches commenced under a white cell of canopy. First, Mason spoke, "My wedding weekend taught me algorithms can predict serendipity." Nana, "Charles, thank you for proving version 2.0 stories are the best upgrades." Tessa presented a check. Proceeds from exhibit ticket sales half to Lillian's Literacy Foundation, half to a new scholarship fund in Margaret's name for minority women pursuing law. Emotions ran high, tissues circulated like currency. 1:00 p.m. First dance redux. A portable dance floor cleaned atop trimmed grass. The quartet switched to full band. Saxophone leading. Charles bowed, hand extended. Mrs. Bennet, fancy a dance? She pretended scandal. I keep my maiden name professionally, sir. He winked. Then Mrs. Brooks Bennet read her extraordinaire. May I? She placed hand in his. They swayed to Blue Mitchell once again. Smartphones captured, but this time the footage would feed hope, not rumor. Halfway through, Charles whispered, knees reporting smooth operation. Lillian answered, heart submitting joyful audit. When the song ended, they didn't release each other right away. Applause filled the space between drum cymbal echoes. 2:15 p.m. Quiet bench beside pond. They slipped away to the willow-shaded bench where months earlier they had argued and almost fractured. Today dragonflies zipped circles, lily pads basked. Charles exhaled, remember our midnight run? I remember lavender crunching under your loafers. And you canceling the ride share with one word. He laced fingers with hers. That moment taught me courage is sometimes just staying put. And sometimes running through fields, she teased. He kissed her hand. We've done both. She leaned into him. Many editions still to publish. They sat silent a while, breeze criffling pond water. A photographer approached. Gestured question. Lillian nodded. Click of shutter froze the mid-Saran smile. Future press piece entitled Love Wins Over Optics would run that photograph weeks later. 3:45 p.m. Farewell constellations. Guests queued for shuttles, pockets stuffed with lavender sachets, hearts puffed with softened edges. Tessa hugged Lillian. Paris next month we revisiting while you two set up the traveling exhibit. Lillian affirmed, croissants on me. Dia fanned her new engagement ring. Victor had proposed under the Unity trellis not 30 minutes earlier. Charles grinned. The garden works quickly. Dwight, departing last, thanked them again. Story broke my record for most positive comments. Feels better. Truth tends to, Charles said. 4:10 p.m. Suite 409 Sunset Encore. Back upstairs they found Suite 409 sprinkled with rose petals. Housekeeping's romance subscription apparently on autopilot. They laughed but let petals lie, divesting shoes and stretching like ex-marathoners. On balcony, sun hovered low, softening everything to amber. 2 glasses of sparkling cider waited. They toasted. To unexpected vows, Lillian said. To every addict that holds a miracle, Charles added. They sipped, then Lillian produced a small envelope. Early wedding gift, open. Inside, 2 train tickets, Atlanta to Savannah, Friday departure, sleeper car. She clarified, you promised me rail romance. He beamed, and you promised new sunrises. Savannah's riverfront qualifies. He offered his own envelope, printed confirmation for a week in Paris, left bank apartment. Jazz club reservations and an art exhibit of use first editions. Her laugh turned into soft gasp, hard exceeding projection metrics. He copped her cheek, margins of joy. They sat side by side until sun-kissed horizon. In lingering glow, Lillian traced the ring on his finger. Do you regret waiting so long? He shook head. I believe we arrived precisely when ready. She pondered, then nodded. I like that theory. Evening, Lavender Ridge driveway. They packed overnight bags into Charles' snow-familiar sedan. Before starting engine, Charles pulled a sheet of paper from glove box. The sunrise promises from Suite 409, now laminated. One more clause, he suggested. She clicked pen. Clause 8. When roads diverge, choose the one with music, she signed. He added beneath, and carry lavender in the glove box. Signature flourish. They slipped promise page into dashboard pocket beside a small sachet. Engine purred to life. As they rolled past Unity Garden, lights strung between trellises twinkled on automatically. Lillian waved through window. Wind tousled her silver hair. Interstate nightfall. Darkness wrapped highway dashboard glowed gentle blue. The jazz playlist rotated to a live Ella Fitzgerald track. Lillian reclined seat, resting hand on Charles's thigh. You know, I never asked favorite use line? He thought while lane markers fliked past. Not the epitaph of hold fast to dreams. Too obvious. I'd choose. I tire so of hearing people say. Let things take their course, tomorrow is another day. Yous argued for seizing the now. She smiled in dim cabin light. Appropriate. She drifted into sleep beneath soft hum. Charles drove steady, mind replaying every impossible inch from pillow walls to trellis boughs. He whispered a quiet thank you to Margaret and Thomas, to lavender fields, to misfiring plumbing systems. Atlanta Lillian's bungalow late night. They arrived, unloaded minimal luggage, left unpacking for morning. Inside living room. Moonlight met lamplight. Walls displayed framed postcards from their summer travel Savannah River dusk. Paris rooftop at dawn. Chicago ethics conference selfie. Charles hung his suit jacket, loose and tie, turned to find Lillian barefoot, twirling stole around shoulders. Dance, she asked, phone in hand already playing music. He laughed at 1 a.m. Interdependent, not codependent, and occasionally impractical. Come on. She pressed play the same Blue Mitchell track. They danced in socks on aged hardwood. Shadows waltzing across peach-colored walls. When song ended, she rested forehead to his. Sunrise Club convenes in 5 hours. He kissed her. Membership still too. Executive board now. They ascended stairs hand in hand. Pillow walls banished forever, but they kept extra pillow anyway for propping up knees that sometimes complained yet never vetoed adventure. Epilogue 3 years later postcard. Picture side a railcar window framing rolling Spanish vineyards. Script handwritten under stamp reads. Membership expanded. Sunrise Club meeting 812. Paris, Savannah, Lagos, now Barcelona. Lavender sachet still safe in glove box and in luggage. Hearts well lit, courage still half-curing. Brooks Bennett. Back in Atlanta, a college student reading their exhibit blog writes an essay titled, Late Blooming Love is Radical Hope. A high school debate team cites Judge Bennett as transparency speech. A little girl in literacy camp opens her first Langston Hughes book donated by the Brooks Foundation. Somewhere, pillow walls tumble quietly in other lives. Somewhere, lavender is planted by hands optimistic enough to trust that seasons turn over and over, bringing blooms at any age. And at Lavender Ridge, a couple in their 70s slow dances under willow branches. Visitors whisper, who are they? The gardener smiles, pruning roses, and replies just two hearts proving tomorrow isn't always another day sometimes. It starts right now. End of chapter 8.